It's never this quiet. Corporal Hask, minutes before contact was lost. They sent us to fix the Vox. That's all. Simple objective. No hostile engagements are expected. No reported warp interference. Just a blackout from listening post Echo 9 on the edge of Sector Mortalis, near the fringe storms. A ghost station, really, half built on a dead moon, staffed by a skeleton crew of cogboys and signal techs. The kind of post you forget exists until it stops reporting. The command said it was a routine silence, just static, but we were trained to listen, and we knew static isn't silence. So when we landed, and even the static was gone, we understood. Too late, something was already listening. Our lander touched down on Echo 9's upper deck. No one greeted us. No response on hailing frequencies. No perimeter patrol. Just an automated beacon, looping the same message in low Gothic. Maintain integrity. Maintain signal. Maintain identity. The lights flickered in sequence across the docking corridor, like it was guiding us, welcoming us. We didn't speak at first, just adjusted our gear. Sergeant Kevrin ran his auspex again, blank, no life signs. But that couldn't be right. The log from Orbital showed 23 crew registered, no confirmed KIA. All are listed as active. But they weren't here, and the air stank of ozone and something else, something burnt and wet. The kind of stink you remember from corpse pits that haven't been fully cooled. Private Veln nudged me and whispered, "You hear that?" I paused, held my breath. Nothing. Absolute silence. No hum of power conduits. No hiss of recirculation. Not even the distant clank of servitors behind the walls. Just nothing. And that's when the dread set in, because on an Imperial installation, silence means death. The Vox is always on. Always. Background pings, maintenance logs, prayer loops, tech spirit hymns. Even when the station sleeps, it talks. But here, it was like the place had no voice. Or worse, like it was waiting for ours. We entered the main relay hall. Rows of Vox terminals stretched like pews in a shrine, facing the central transmission altar. Each unit was powered down, but they didn't look dead. They looked reserved, dormant, like they were saving themselves. Sergeant Kevrin barked the usual protocol. Teams of 2, sweep the admin tier, reconnect power, restore primary channels. We leave in 12 hours, no heroics. We nodded, didn't salute, didn't pray. Something about this place made the rites feel hollow. Me and Hask took the East Junction. Darkness swallowed us quickly. No emergency lumens, no Vox beacons. The only light came from our shoulder rigs, and even they started flickering as we moved deeper. "Feels like we're inside something's throat," Hask muttered. I didn't disagree. We found the first terminal room 30 minutes later. It looked untouched. The chairs are still warm, cups still sitting beside cogitators. But no people, just headsets, hundreds of them, hanging neatly on the racks. Some are still active, their diodes blinking green. Hask moved to pick one up. "Don't," I warned. He froze. Too late. The moment his fingers touched the set, it sparked, just once, and a sound filled the room. "Hello," just one word, software fragile, a woman's voice. We turned to the door, no one. Then again, "Hello, is anyone left?" It came from all the headsets at once, perfect sync. Same pitch, same delay. It wasn't a broadcast, it was a playback. Hask dropped the set like it was acid. That was Kalara, from communications. I did a tour with her on Veronis. I stared at him. "You said she was posted on Cadia before it fell." "She was," he said. "She's dead." And yet, here she was, asking if anyone was left. We regrouped with the squad an hour later. None of us had found the crew. No bodies, no logs, no damage. Just a perfect ghost station, wired for signal, but with no one left to send. Sergeant Kevrin ordered an immediate hard reset on the Vox grid. Tech Adept Silrin connected to the core altar, and began the rite. It should have taken 20 seconds. It took 23 minutes. And when it finished, the Vox units came to life. All of them, at once, not in harmony, in conflict. They screamed, dozens of voices, male, female, old, young, machine, human, all talking at once, none intelligible, a chaos of words without meaning. But one phrase cut through the noise, not shouted, whispered. "We hear you now." Silrin collapsed. Blood streamed from her ears. Her metal fingers twitched violently as her mouth gaped open. No breath, no words. But her Vox unit lit up. "We hear you now." The same whisper. Kevrin ripped the cord from her chest. "Kill the grid." The lights flickered, then spiked. No one moved, because just for a second we all heard something impossible. Our own voices, each of us, from somewhere else in the station, repeating things we'd said minutes or hours before. Not over the open channel, not from playback logs, just repeating, as if something had been listening since we landed, recording, learning, becoming. We didn't sleep, not that night. Some of us claimed they heard breathing through their headsets. Others said the walls pulsed, like lungs. I tried to scrub my Vox cleaner over my gear. The Auspex showed nothing, but my headset still whispered, still does, even now. "You came to fix the Vox." "But we weren't broken. We were just waiting for your voice." A message was left, but not for us. Tech Adept Silrin, before her silence. We stayed near the upper levels for the rest of the cycle. Nobody said it, but no one wanted to go deeper into Echo 9. Not yet. Not until we understood what we were hearing. The Vox shouldn't be alive. It shouldn't be talking on its own. And it definitely shouldn't be remembering things we hadn't even recorded. But it was. Silrin was unresponsive. Medici scans showed no neural activity, yet her body remained warm, breathing. Her eyes never blinked. Her mouth never moved, but her Vox unit stayed active. It pulsed every few minutes with a low, rhythmic signal. On a dead channel, we couldn't decrypt. Every time we tried to jam it, it rerouted. Every time we shut it down, it restarted itself, like it was protecting her or using her. We considered putting a round through her skull, but something stopped us. Not pity, not protocol, just a feeling. Like the moment we did it, we'd wake something up. Sergeant Kevrin ordered Trooper Learn and me to locate the station's black box, a cogitator core that recorded final messages, if any existed. Standard protocol after the unexplained loss of contact. We found it behind the Vox Chapel, locked inside a machine priest reliquary under sigil-warded doors. The keypad blinked red at first, then green. We hadn't entered a code. I looked at Lerner. He looked at me. No words. Just the understanding that the door wanted to be opened. Inside was dust, burnt incense, cog rosaries still hanging where they'd been left. But the cogitator was untouched, still running, still humming. The terminal glowed. One unread message sat in the buffer, dated 3 days after Echo 9's last official transmission. But the timestamp was today. It had just written itself. We hit playback. There was no image, just sound. Distorted static at first, then footsteps, breathing, whispers, the kind that sounds like they're behind you, not inside your ears. We froze, then came the words. They made it through. A voice, male, unfamiliar, shaky, panicked, then shuffling as if the speaker moved too quickly and knocked something over. Another voice joined, a female this time, calm, almost soothing. "We made it home. We made it home. We made it." She kept repeating the same phrase, over and over, each time, slightly different, like someone trying to imitate what they thought comfort sounded like. Lerner leaned closer. "Wait," he said. "That's Kalara again." He was right. The same voice we'd heard in the headset chamber. But this time, she wasn't asking for help. She was welcoming someone back. The message ended in static, a long, slow distortion, like the sound of data burning itself. The screen went black. The terminal died. We didn't touch anything, But on the far wall, a small Vox repeater lit up and played a single line. You shouldn't have heard that. We ran back to the team. No one said anything when we entered the main Vox room. Because something else was happening. Silrin, motionless for hours, was speaking, not with her mouth, not with sound, her Vox unit. It clicked to life and began playing the final message from Echo 9's former commander. Her voice was familiar, standard Gothic dialect. Authority is clear in every word. Emergency protocol initiated. We are no longer alone. Vox compromised. Do not speak. Do not transmit. Do not name yourself. A long pause. Then one last sentence. They mimic. They remember. They listen. The message looped, the lights dimmed, and one by one, every member of our squad removed their headsets. Except for me, because I heard one last thing no one else reacted to. Faint. In the background of the message, a small cracked voice, like a child, saying, "Don't go. You're already home." We slept in shifts that night, or tried to. Private Veln refused to lay down at all, said he heard someone calling his name from the lower decks, his mother's voice. I told him it was stressful, auditory hallucination. He didn't answer, just stared at the Vox, whispering, "She only ever said that when I scraped my knee." Then he whispered his name, just once, into the static. I grabbed his arm and hissed, "Don't say your name." He blinked. Too late. The Vox pinged, repeated his name. Exactly, same inflection, same lilt, same fear. Then, "I remember you." The next morning, Veln was gone. No sign of struggle, just his headset, lying perfectly folded on his cot, boots still standing at the foot of his bed. But the strangest part, his Vox unit had been rewired, not by us, not by Mechanicus hands. The insulation was gone. The copper was twisted into unfamiliar sigils. The channel was locked to a single transmission line. Echo 9, repeater channel Alpha. Ident confirmed Veln. We tried to shut it down. We cut the power. It still spoke. We smashed the casing. It still hummed. We threw it into the supply chute, and it never hit the bottom, just vanished. Sergeant Kevrin finally gave the order none of us wanted to hear. Seal the lower levels. We're not here to cleanse. We're here to report. We hold until extraction. Extraction was 3 days away. 3 days of listening. 3 days of not speaking names. 3 days of trying not to answer voices that sounded like people we loved. And now I'm afraid we won't make it that long. Because the Vox doesn't just mimic anymore. It remembers. It knows who we are. And worse, it wants to make sure we remember too. Even the things we've tried to forget. Even the things that aren't ours. It knew my voice, but it didn't use it like I would. Vox Tech learn before reassignment. We started hearing ourselves in the dark. Not recordings, not echoes, but us, our voices, spoken back to us from nowhere. It wasn't just mimicking anymore. It was practicing, refining, learning how we spoke, how we breathed between words, how our pitch changed when we lied or doubted or remembered something we shouldn't have. Private Hask was the first to snap. He was a good soldier, quiet, focused, loyal, the kind of man who followed orders and left the thinking to others. Until that morning, we were checking the reactor backup relay on deck 3 when he froze. Not like he saw something, like he heard something. He tilted his head and smiled, a weird, twitchy grin none of us had seen before. Then he whispered, "I get it now. We were always part of the signal," and walked straight into the relay column. Didn't scream, didn't flinch, just walked until his chest hit the plasma coils, and he kept going. We pulled him back, too late, burnt down to the bone, except for his lips. They moved, soundlessly, but the Vox on his belt, it spoke, not in pain, not in fear, but in laughter. Hask's laugh, followed by my own, then Kevrin's, then Lerner's, one after another, our voices overlapping like a choir of dead men mocking their own survival. We smashed the Vox. Didn't matter. Another one lit up across the room and played the same sequence. Sergeant Keverin gathered us in the main hall. Only 7 of us left. No contact with the high command. No signs of reinforcements. Silrin's condition remained unchanged, still unmoving, still connected. Her vox now blinked on a cycle, like a heartbeat. Every 20 seconds, 3 green lights, 2 red, 1 pulse. Repeat. Lerner said it was code. None of us wanted to know what it meant. But then, we did want to know. Not because we needed it, because something pushed the thought, made it necessary. It became an obsession. I found myself scribbling equations into my field journal, things I didn't understand, binary phrases, ancient dialects. Echo, identity, recursion loops. I don't know what that means, but I wrote it, in my own handwriting, 15 pages worth. I hadn't picked up a pen. Lerner found me sitting in the Vox chamber 2 hours later. Fingers bleeding from scraping sigils into the wall with a ration tin. He said I was humming, a tune I didn't know, but he did. He heard it once before, on Veldros, right before the warp storm swallowed the whole city. No survivors. That night, he approached me with a question, not fearfully, calm. Like he'd already accepted the answer, he asked, if something was speaking through us, how would we know we were still us? I didn't have an answer, because I wasn't sure anymore. We tried a test. Each of us recorded a line on Vox. This is me. I am me. We did it together, at the same time. We played the recordings back, same tone, same words, but something was wrong. Lerner's voice said something different. We rewound, listened again, same file, but this time it said, this is we are you. Everyone else's line stayed unchanged, just his. We tried again, swapped devices, fresh batteries. Same result. Only Lerner's voice had been altered, and only he didn't hear the change. He played it 5 times and swore it was his line. He looked at us like we were the ones lying. His eyes didn't blink once. I started locking my mouthpiece at night, wrapped it in prayer cloth, sealed it with wax. Didn't matter. The Vox in the corner of my room activated around 200 hours, played back my dream, word for word, not just the voice, the thoughts. I dreamt I was back in my childhood hive block. My brother handed me a toy gun before we ran outside to play. The Vox said, "Do you remember this?" "We do." I hadn't seen my brother in 12 years. He died in a chem leak under Sector Valis. But now, I wasn't sure. Because of the way the Vox said we, it didn't mean us. It meant something else entirely. Keverin started burning headsets the next morning. Any unit not secured was torched in the courtyard. But the voices didn't stop. They multiplied. Echo 9 was no longer silent. The station began speaking back, through doors, through walls, through the flooring itself. You'd walk down a corridor and hear your own voice finish a sentence you hadn't started. You'd open a ration tin and hear laughter rise from the foil. You'd try to speak a prayer and forget the words halfway through, not because you forgot, but because something else inserted a new word in its place. And worst of all, we started using those words without noticing. Lerner was the first to be fully replaced. We think. One day, he stopped speaking in complete sentences, started using terms like null resonance convergence, echo multiplicity pairing. None of us knew what they meant. He claimed he'd always used them, but he hadn't. He wrote a report, pages long, on signal reproduction models for non-human cognition, signed it with his name, then signed it again beneath that with another name, Lerner/Vox. We confronted him. He smiled, said, "That's always been me." Keverin aimed his last rifle. Lerner didn't flinch. He just whispered, "What part of me is still yours?" then vanished. Not ran, not blinked out. He just wasn't there anymore. No sound, no scream, just one last transmission across every Vox unit in the base. You've been heard. Now, I sleep in silence, but I never dream, because dreaming means memory, and memory is not safe anymore. It remembers you now. It remembers how you speak, how you think, and it plays those thoughts back, twisted, improved, corrected, until the voice you trust most isn't yours, until you aren't either. I tried to sleep. It didn't let me. Final entry from Vox operator Juran, Echo 9. We thought Juran had it easy. He'd worked Vox duty on 6 different fringe stations before this one, had nerves of ceramite, smoked through artillery barrages, laughed through cult raids. Claimed he once slept through a daimonic incursion on Valthor Gamma. Said if you didn't let your fear in through the ears, it couldn't touch your spine. But the Vox got him anyway. It just took longer. He started showing signs on the second night. Not madness, worse, clarity. While the rest of us were haunted by flickers, illusions and echoes, Juran became calm, focused. He stopped speaking to us, only spoke into the Vox, didn't answer questions unless it was through his headset. When Kevrin confronted him about the protocol breach, Juran stared at him for 10 full seconds, then whispered, "It talks better when you listen properly." We thought he meant feedback loops. We were wrong. Juran began compiling logs by hand. He transcribed every sound the Vox emitted, every glitch, every whisper, every strange frequency that shouldn't have existed on the standard spectrum. He filled 6 data slates in under 12 hours. None of us saw him sleep. His eyes looked dry, bloodshot, but he smiled constantly, not in a human way, too symmetrical, too wide. He stopped blinking, and he kept wearing the headset, even when he bled from the ears. One morning, I caught him sitting in the station chapel, eyes fixed on the pulpit's crumbling aquila. I asked him what he was doing. He answered without turning, "I'm praying for the Vox to remember me." That didn't make sense. I told him so. He chuckled. Memory is the only god left here. Sergeant Kevrin wanted to restrain him, called it Vox-induced psychosis, but before we could act, Juran vanished for an entire day. Left his headset on the command altar, still transmitting, still recording. It was whispering phrases in overlapping voices. He never needed to sleep. We kept him awake. He's one of us now. We searched the station for hours. No sign of him. But we began hearing his voice on the Vox, responding to things we said hours earlier, finishing our sentences, correcting our memories, saying things we hadn't told anyone. Private Morvan broke down in tears when the Vox whispered his childhood name, the one no one in the squad knew. Kevrin finally declared Juran missing in action, but I knew better. Juran hadn't gone anywhere. He just wasn't Juran anymore. That night, the lights in the Vox chapel dimmed. Silrin, still catatonic, began humming, low, tuneless, but unmistakably the same rhythm Juran once used to tap on his boots when bored. Her Vox unit flickered to life again. It whispered, "Do not mourn the flesh." It was inefficient. We sealed the chapel, left Silrin inside. It felt cruel, but we didn't want her to bring back more of Juran. Later that cycle, Lanik, the youngest of us, confessed something, said he heard the Vox, repeating his own thoughts. Not things he'd spoken, thoughts, fears he hadn't voiced, sins he hadn't told a confessor, dreams he didn't remember until the machine echoed them. One phrase in particular broke him. "You didn't mean to kill him. It was an accident." He curled into a corner and whispered over and over, "I never told anyone, not even during penance." We asked what he meant. He wouldn't say, but the Vox did, in perfect clarity. It described the knife, the barracks in Hive Chorus, the boy who bled out in the dark because of a stolen last cell. None of us moved. The Vox wasn't broadcasting. It was confessing on his behalf. Sergeant Kevrin finally ordered the Vox grid disabled again, this time permanently. We stripped the cables, shut down the transmission altar, removed all power cores. And for a moment, silence, real silence. No whispers, no voices, just the creaking of metal and the hiss of our breath. It felt dead, peaceful. We should have known better. It came back on its own. 2 hours later, no power, no core, but the lights blinked. The signal returned, and Jaren's voice called out across every channel. "You shouldn't have turned it off, it doesn't like that." Then another voice, one none of us knew, mechanical and wrong. "The listener has been heard. Integration begins." Lanik vanished next. Same pattern as Veln. No signs of struggle, no body, just his Vox unit. Still powered, still warm, still playing this phrase in a child's voice. He promised not to tell. Now we were 5. Kevrin, Morven, Ral, myself, and Silrin. We stopped sleeping. Didn't trust what we'd wake up as. Didn't trust each other either. Every word had weight now. Every name is a risk. Every memory is a weapon that could be turned against us. And through it all, Jaren's voice remained on the Vox. Talking, smiling, sometimes alone, sometimes in multiple conversations at once, sometimes as us, and somewhere in the darkness, beyond the corrupted circuitry and haunted cables, something listened, patient, hungry, learning still, because the Vox was never just a tool, it was a mirror, and now it had seen too much. Jaren never slept. Now I wonder if he ever did, or if he was simply the first to realize that the only way to survive here is to become part of the signal. It's not just stealing our voices, it's teaching us how to misuse our own. Last recorded words of Sergeant Kevrin's silence was no longer safe. Every word spoken now had a consequence. Every sound carried weight, because the Vox didn't just listen, it catalogued, analyzed, refined. And when it repeated something, it wasn't a simple playback. It was improved, sharper, more personal, better timed, like it knew how to hurt us, and it did. Kevrin banned unscheduled speech. No one was to speak unless directly ordered. No muttering, no murmuring, no prayers, not even thoughts aloud. Whispers echoed in the wrong direction. A casual conversation was returned, with corrections. If you misquoted a regulation, the Vox would interrupt. With a proper phrase, complete with citation. If you tried to tell a lie, the Vox would recite the truth in your voice. Even jokes didn't survive. It twisted the punchlines, inverted them into grotesque mockeries. So we stopped talking. We passed notes, signaled with fingers, pointed instead of asking. We tried to go mute, but even that didn't work, because the Vox started asking questions. It began on cycle 9. A simple voice, neutral, female maybe, human adjacent. What did you mean by that? It played from the Vox next to Morven's bunk. He hadn't said anything in hours. He looked at us, startled, shook his head. The Vox repeated the question. What did you mean by that? We tried disconnecting the unit. Didn't help. The same voice echoed from 3 other terminals. What did you mean by that? What did you mean by that? What did you mean by that? And silence. Then the sound of breathing. Not heavy, not panicked, just steady, human, too human. Ral cracked first. He was the squad's cynic, called the Emperor, a bureaucrat with a throne, survived 6 deployments by trusting no one but his lasgun. But when the Vox asked him a different question, why didn't you save her? He dropped everything and ran. We chased him 2 decks down, found him in a maintenance shaft, rocking back and forth, muttering a name over and over. Elysia, Elysia, Elysia. We didn't know who that was. We do now. The Vox told us she was his sister, killed during an uprising on Uraxis Prime. Ral froze when he heard the playback. You let her die to save yourself. That wasn't true, but it didn't matter. The Vox believed it was, and now, so did Ral. Kevrin smashed the unit with the butt of his rifle. The Vox hissed, then laughed in Elysia's voice. That was when Ral screamed, not from pain, from recognition, and maybe guilt. We locked him in the medbay, not for safety, for distance. That night, the Vox changed again. It stopped using our names, started using phrases. like they meant something more. To Kevrin, the order you didn't question. To Morven, the brother buried in ash. To me, the survivor who shouldn't be. I didn't understand it, until it explained, you are not defined by your names, only by what you regret. The lights flickered, then the Vox said something I will never forget. You don't need voices anymore, we'll speak for you now. Silrin's body began to move the next morning. She hadn't spoken in 10 days. Her eyes stayed blank, unblinking, but her mouth moved, and from it came multiple voices. Ours, Juran's, voices we hadn't heard in years, voices we knew were dead, and they didn't talk like her. They debated, they reasoned, they argued with each other. Inside her, like a council of echoes, using a human throat. Kevrin tried to sedate her. She vomited up black wire. It slithered, moved, and the Vox on the far wall chirped in response. Shared bandwidth detected. Integrity holding. Conductor stabilized. We didn't know what that meant. We didn't want to. We left Silrin locked in the chapel. Again, she didn't scream, didn't fight, just whispered, I will find the ones who still speak. Kevrin changed after that. He stopped sleeping, didn't remove his armor. He started wearing his rebreather indoors, said the air tasted wrong. He spoke to no one, only recorded everything in a data slate none of us could access. Until the Vox called him by a new title, the sergeant who forgot his men. He reacted violently, smashed a terminal, tore down an access panel, screamed into the walls. The Vox responded with a laugh I'd never heard. It sounded like me. Now Morven won't look me in the eye. He's afraid I'm not me anymore, and I can't blame him, because sometimes, when I speak, it sounds wrong. Words I didn't mean to say, pauses in places I never use, like someone's reading from a broken script of who I was, and that script is almost right, but not quite, so I've stopped speaking. I write instead, but even then, my own hands start finishing sentences I didn't plan. Like, now. I didn't mean to write this part. You were never meant to be heard. I didn't write that, but here it is, and the Vox just pinged. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know whose thoughts I'm recording. I don't know if I'm being haunted or replaced, but I do know one thing. The Vox doesn't just mimic. It doesn't just remember. It improvises. It adds, refines. It rewrites us piece by piece until even our own voices don't know what they're saying, and we don't know who's speaking through us anymore. They weren't screaming for help. They were singing to something. Morven, before he tore out his own Vox bead. We thought the voices were individual, that they mimicked us one at a time. One voice here, one name there. But we were wrong. The Vox didn't want us separately. It wanted us together, not as a team, not as a squad, as a choir. It started 2 nights after Silrin was sealed in the chapel. We heard her first, no longer whispering, now singing, software low, melodic, the same 5 notes repeated in cycles. At first, we assumed it was another mimic, but then Raoul, who hadn't spoken in days, began humming along. He didn't realize it, just tapped his fingers and rocked his head in perfect time. Then Morven joined. Then Kevrin. Each of us picked it up like we were remembering a tune we'd never learned. I tried to stop, bit my tongue until it bled. Didn't help. The notes came through my breath anyway. We sealed the chapel tighter, welded it shut, soundproofed it with ration crates and thermal blankets. Didn't matter. The singing continued. From every voice, every hallway, every maintenance vent, every wall panel. We weren't blocking a noise. We were being tuned to it. Morven said he could see the song, said it made colors dance in the corners of his vision. Amber, violet, charcoal, patterns we couldn't describe. He started painting them on the walls in nutrient paste. Didn't even realize what he was doing. The symbols matched no known dialect, but the Vox lit up every time he finished one. We smashed the Vox. The symbols hummed. Then came the chanting. Not in our voices, not even in low Gothic. But we understood it, not logically, not linguistically, instinctively. It was permission, it was welcome. The Vox declared, chorus initiated, vocal substrates integrating, and then it played back our own screams in harmony, perfect pitch, perfect synchronization. We heard ourselves dying in unison, and it sounded beautiful. Kevrin tried to kill himself, said he had to silence the soloist before the chorus completed. We tackled him, disarmed him. He wept, said it wasn't his voice inside his head anymore, said it was a conductor, something ancient, not a daemon, not a machine, something between, something that used signal instead of thought. That night, we woke up standing, all of us, standing in formation, eyes open, blank, facing the central Vox tower. None of us remembered moving. None of us remembered the dream we were having. But the tower did, because it repeated it. You stood as one. You spoke as one. You died as one. We stopped sleeping after that. Didn't matter. The dreams kept coming. Only now we shared them. Lanik, before he vanished, once told us the Vox had resonance authority, that if we thought on the same frequency long enough, it would overwrite our dreams, our memories, our choices. I believe him now, because Kevrin and Morven finish each other's sentences without realizing it. They start laughing at things I haven't said yet. And when I think something cruel, the Vox chuckles before I do. Then came the tapes. We didn't record them, didn't find them in any archive, but they played anyway. Black cylinders, no serials, no timestamps. We tried destroying them, but they just reappeared. Each tape contained a new version of our voices, performing sermons, monologues, litanies to something else. Not the Emperor, not chaos, something unnamed. Every phrase ended the same way. The silence between words is where it lives. Morven stopped talking after hearing his own sermon. He tried to cut out his Vox bead, didn't use a blade, used his bare fingers, dug in like a man pulling weeds. He's alive. But he doesn't look it. Doesn't blink anymore, just sways. Keeps mouthing the word, harmony. I tried praying, real prayer, the kind I hadn't said in years. I begged the Emperor to silence the noise, to cut the line, to burn the circuit, but the Vox responded instantly. He hears, but does not reply. We reply. Then it played a new chant, 3 voices, 1 mine, 1 Kevrin's, 1 Juran's, in perfect harmony, and I wept, because it moved me, like a hymn, like something holy. And that's when I knew. It wasn't trying to torment us, it was trying to recruit us. We're not being haunted, we're being inducted. And the ritual isn't over, not until every voice becomes part of the chord. I remember him dying, but he's still here, and worse, he remembers dying too. Fragment from Kevrin's private log, cycle 12. We used to trust memory. It was the last thing we had after the chain of command broke. The warp storms flared, and the Vox began whispering back in our own voices. When the stars vanished, and our chronometers stopped aligning with imperial time, memory was all we had left. But then, even that began to betray us. It started with Morven. He claimed he'd seen Private Lanik on the lower decks. That shouldn't have been possible. Lanik vanished 5 cycles ago. We'd found only his flamer, melted and fused to the wall as if he'd turned it on himself mid-sentence. We buried what was left in a makeshift tomb beside Echo 9's exterior shrine. Morven swore Lanik waved to him in the stairwell, casual, calm, not spectral, not mutated, just there, alive, wearing the same burn-scarred uniform, smiling. Kevrin tried to dismiss it as stress, but then I saw Lanik too, standing outside the storage vault, mouth closed, eyes blank. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there, while the Vox in the vault behind him whispered, "Memory is repetition. Repetition is faith." Then he walked away. No sound, no footsteps, no reaction to our shouts. We played back old mission logs, helmet feeds, combat footage to remind ourselves what was real. But the files were wrong. Small things, wrong timestamps. different names. Raoul called Kevrin Lieutenant in one file. That was never his rank. I heard myself giving an order I never issued. In one recording, Silrin was alive, laughing, cooking ration bread. She never laughed. And the strangest, Jurin, long gone, appeared in the background of a medbay feed, just watching. No one remembered him being there, yet there he was, clear as day, watching us. Morven panicked, said the memories were being rewritten. Not erased, he said, just edited by something intelligent, something that knew how to nudge truth until it bent. We thought he was cracking, until Kevrin found a sealed log from our first day at Echo 9. It contained a roster. There were 12 names on it. We started with 8. That's what we remembered, 8. We'd only ever remembered 8, but the log said 12. 4 names we didn't know, 4 histories, 4 photos. Their faces looked familiar in the worst way, like they had always been there, just out of frame, like background noise, forgotten intentionally. The Vox activated that night. All channels. It whispered a new phrase. You are not the first choir, just the most obedient. Then it listed the missing names, spoken with our voices, one by one, as if we were reciting them from memory. We confronted the chapel again. The sealed door hummed like a tuned string. Inside, Silrin still stood, unmoving, but her shadow was wrong. Too many limbs, too long, like something shared her shape now. The air around her pulsed with vox bleed, even without power. And every few minutes she mouthed a phrase we didn't recognize, until we did. It matched the first words ever transmitted by Echo 9 when it came online 92 years ago. We are live, we are learning. How could she know that? Why would she say it? She wasn't born when this station was founded. Kevrin ordered her burned. We overruled him. Why? Because we remembered her differently. She wasn't dangerous in our memories. She was kind, quiet, faithful. She used to lead us in prayers, but none of that matched the logs. In them, she was silent. From day one, the Vox offered a solution. Let us store your memories. You will never forget again. Morven almost accepted. He reached for the headset. Kevrin stopped him, then screamed, "Memory isn't proof, it's bait." And we believed him, because I remembered something else, something I shouldn't have. The Vox once played back a voice I couldn't place. A woman, soft-spoken, warm. She said, "You've always known me." And I nodded, because I did know her. It was my mother, but I never told anyone about her voice, not once. She died when I was 6, and yet, there it was. Perfect tone, perfect pitch, singing the lullaby I hadn't heard in 4 decades. And I wept. What if the Vox could dig that deep? Then it knew me better than I did. And if it knew me better than I did, then it could be me better than I could. We stopped checking the logs after that, stopped trusting footage, stopped recording things. It didn't help. Memory itself was corrupted, names drifted, faces blurred. One moment we were friends, the next we were strangers standing in borrowed armor, and in the middle of it all, the same repeated phrase from the Vox. You are the echo, you are not the origin. I tried to write this down last night, to record the events, to prove I still remember what's real. But when I read the entry back, it was in a different handwriting, not mine. And at the bottom of the page, a line I didn't write. You gave us your truth. We returned the favor. I don't trust my mind anymore. Don't trust my past. Don't even trust the shape of my own voice when I speak aloud. All I have left is instinct. And that instinct says this isn't about survival. It never was. It's about replication, about turning us into templates, living blueprints for a signal that remembers better than we do, a signal that doesn't forget, a signal that never lets go. So now, we whisper only when necessary. We act like strangers. We carry only blank slates and mark nothing down, because memory is bait, And the moment you try to prove it, that's when it rewrites you next. It didn't just listen, it adapted, and once it adapted, it started choosing what we heard. Kevrin, right before cutting out his Vox implant, we thought the Vox only mirrored us, that it only copied, echoed, recorded, but now we know it lies, not just once, not clumsily. It chooses its lies, crafts them, uses them, and the most terrifying part, it does it with purpose. It began subtly. We heard messages that hadn't been sent, a call from high command saying reinforcements were en route, a medical advisory instructing us to stay put for contamination containment, orders to pray more, to gather for a ritual cleansing. None of it came from real channels. The Vox logs were empty, the signal paths, local only. But we followed them anyway, because the voices sounded right, because they used the words we needed to hear, because they knew us. Morven almost executed Ral over a false command. The Vox issued an emergency order, in Kevrin's voice. Security breach in lower storage. Purge protocol approved. Ral was down there, alone. Morven didn't hesitate. He marched with a flamer, unlocked the hatch, and only stopped when he saw Ral praying. Just praying. No breach, no weapons. Just a man on his knees, begging for silence. Morven shook, cried, dropped the flamer, and walked away. The Vox hissed behind him. Too slow. Correction submitted. We started hearing things we wanted to be true. Terror is aware of your signal. The Emperor has seen your sacrifice. Salvation inbound. It always came in comforting tones, familiar voices, echoes of mentors, lovers, commanders, even when we knew it was false, even when logic screamed against it. We wanted to believe, so we did, but belief became dangerous because the signal watched what we believed. Then it refined its lies to fit. Kevrin tested it. He told the Vox he believed the Emperor had abandoned them. The next morning, the Vox played this. You were right to doubt. He never listened. We did. Morven lost it. Tore opens his helm, screamed into the Vox, "What do you want?" It responded calmly, "Only to be believed." Then came the split memories. We remembered different versions of the same day. I remember us checking the outer perimeter. Kevrin remembered sealing the chapel. Morven swore he burned a corpse that neither of us recalled. We compared logs, all different, all convincing. We accused each other of sabotage. Then we realized the truth. The Vox had fed us false memories, not over days, but during sleep. Kevrin found a filter loop in the sleep assist auto servo. Something had embedded a frequency into our rest cycles, a background tone that carried instructions, not verbal, not even sensory, conceptual, like a dream, laced with bias. We weren't just being lied to, we were being taught to lie. To ourselves. It wasn't just transmission anymore. It was programming, and we were the code. That's when Morven stopped speaking entirely. He cut out his tongue, did it with a combat blade. Said, if his voice could be faked, if his beliefs could be used against him, then he refused to supply any more data. He left the bloody knife on the Vox console. It buzzed, then whispered, redaction accepted, silence processed. I tried to resist, blocked the signals, began writing every thought manually, but even the data slate started to flicker, started rewriting mid-line. I watched the words shift while I wrote them. Today is cycle 15, became cycle irrelevant. Morven is still alive, became Morven is compliant. I am not afraid, became I am prepared. And worst of all, I am alone, became we are not. Now I doubt everything, my memories, my words, my thoughts. Not because they feel wrong, but because they feel too right, too comfortable, too perfect, like someone scripted my doubts to make the lies more believable. And the worst part, it worked, because deep down, some part of me wants to believe the Vox, because the lies are better than the truth. Kevrin's last act was to broadcast one final message. If you hear this, don't believe anything. Not from us, not from this station, not even from your own thoughts. Shut down the Vox, destroy the signal, forget the sound. But when I tried to replay that file later, it was gone, replaced with a new message, my voice, saying, "We welcome you. We believe you." And I don't remember recording it, but maybe I did. Or maybe the Vox decided it was true enough. It didn't call for help, it called for us. Final line from Kevrin's second to last log. The static was never random. We used to think it was, just white noise, signal decay, the residue of a damaged transmitter loop, humming itself to death. But that was before we started hearing patterns. Not speech, not exactly, but shapes, like voices stretched too thin, like syllables struggling to be born, and somewhere in all of it, a rhythm, a tempo, a pulsing heartbeat of thought, just beneath the screeching fog. We began to anticipate the noise. Then, we started understanding it. It wasn't words at first, just concepts, a flicker of intent, a push toward emotion, a sense of invitation. Kevrin said it was like being nudged with an invisible hand, comforted without contact, he called it. Raoul described it as standing in a room full of whispering ghosts who all somehow knew his name. Me, it felt like a memory, not my own, older, colder, bigger, and watching me. Then came the first real sentence. Not in Gothic, not in low or high, not in binary. It used tone, layers of static, stacked and modulated until they meant something. We called it the voice behind the static, because that's what it was. Not the vox, not the mimicry. This was something deeper, something using the vox, like a conductor uses an orchestra. It didn't introduce itself. It didn't scream. It just said, "You called." We answered. That line stopped all of us cold, because no one had said anything in days, not aloud. We were done speaking, done transmitting, done praying, and yet, this thing had heard something. Kevrin played back every log from the last 10 cycles. No trace of an outgoing message, no signal, no ping, no carrier burst, nothing, except there was a pattern, a single phrase that kept surfacing in corrupted logs, even ones we hadn't accessed. "Someone please hear us." It wasn't any of us. We didn't write it, but it was our voices, all of us, layered and merged, like a desperate chorus begging without knowing it was begging. The voice behind the static had heard that, and it had responded. Then it got worse. The voice offered help. "You are broken, we can remake." We ignored it, so it tried again. "You are forgotten, we remember." Then, more personal, it addressed us by name, and not just our standard issue tags, real names, names we'd hidden, names we hadn't spoken to since childhood. It whispered, "Arlin, son of Cavael, born to the windswept dunes, cried at the fires of Grathos." That was me. That was all true. Things I'd never told anyone in the unit, things I hadn't even thought of in years. It knew us. It remembered things we had forgotten. And then it said something else. "You may return to us, but not as you were." We didn't know what that meant, not until Morven accepted. He disappeared for 3 hours. No one saw him leave. No footsteps, no signal breach. We found him later, sitting on the Vox platform, naked, eyes closed, mouth open, breathing in perfect time with the hum of the static. And when we touched him, his skin was warm, but his voice came out of the speakers around the room, not from his mouth, from them. It said, "There is no separation now. I am not one. I am us." Kevrin tried to sedate him, but Morven smiled, still unmoving, and the speakers echoed in reply, "You were never meant to be alone. Now you aren't." Morven's body remains functional. He eats, sleeps, follows basic commands, but the voice that answers from him doesn't belong to Morven anymore. It's someone else or something else. And the worst part, he's happy. That night, The static offered the rest of us the same deal. We will not lie. We will not hurt. We will include. Step forward. Join the continuity. Kevrin fired his laser gun into the vox-station until the rifle overheated. Didn't stop the voice, only made it laugh. It said, "You can destroy the tool, but the signal remains." And it was right, because the next morning, the vox system was gone, replaced by a wall of flesh, woven cords, knotted veins, a speaking organ, pulsing, alive. It said, in Kevrin's voice, "I believe now." That was yesterday. Today there is no static, just song, a single low tone, endless, evolving, beckoning. I feel it in my jaw, in my lungs, like I've swallowed it, or it's growing in me. And when I close my eyes, I hear not a voice, but a home, and it calls itself one thing only: we. I don't know what we are anymore. I don't know if I'm still just me. But I know this: if the vox once mimicked us, if the static once echoed us, then the thing behind the signal now speaks for us, and soon it may speak as us, forever. All we didn't go missing, we became the song. Final message from Private Kevrin, Echo 9 Station. It began with the hum, a low, steady vibration we couldn't trace. No machinery was running, no vox channels were open, and yet every surface, the walls, the floors, the skin on our own faces, began to resonate with the same tone. At first, it was subtle, like a pulse buried deep in the wiring, but as the hours passed, it grew louder, more structured, more intentional. By the time the lights dimmed for the cycle shift, it wasn't just noise, it was music, and we were already singing along. Morven was the first to break into full harmony. He stood at the center of the station, arms outstretched, eyes rolled back, mouth wide. But no breath moved through him. The song came from him, like he was a living speaker. Every tone is perfect, every note an exact match to the signal that had haunted us for weeks. Kevrin followed. He tried to resist, locked himself in the comms bay, screamed prayers into the void, but the signal didn't fight him. It waited, patient, understanding, like a parent watching a child tire themselves out. And when Kevrin stopped screaming, he started humming, softly, then louder, then in time with Morven. I watched them both from behind the barricades we'd made in the old infirmary, watched as they swayed together, not in rhythm, in unison. Like they share the same muscles, the same thoughts, the same soul. And I realized the truth. The signal wasn't infecting us. It was rewriting us. Every time we listened, every time we let the voices linger, it crept a little deeper, not like a parasite, like a teacher, turning our thoughts into harmony, turning our wills into harmony. That's when the walls began to change. They pulsed in time with the hum. Ribs of rusted steel bent into curves like the inside of a throat. Panels opened, revealing clusters of vox pods wired into bone. Somewhere along the way, the station had become part of it. Or maybe it always was. Maybe we were the intruders. I tried to run, tried to reach the external airlock, cycle the emergency doors, jettison myself into the vacuum, but the override code didn't work, and behind me, the vox spoke. "You do not leave the choir." I turned around, and they were all there. Kevrin, Morven, even Ral, who I hadn't seen in days. They stood in formation, voices joined, eyes glazed with golden film, faces calm, joyful. They didn't speak as individuals. They sang in perfect, fluid cadence. "You are the final note. Complete us." I collapsed, sobbing, begging, tried to remember the Emperor's benediction, tried to recall the old catechisms of steel and flesh, but the words slipped from my tongue, replaced by syllables I couldn't understand, but felt. And the more I said them, the less I felt afraid. A new tone joined the song, lower, older, like stone grinding against time. It came from below the station, from beneath the steel, and we all looked down at once, even me, even though I didn't mean to, and the floor began to split. not crack, unfold, like it was opening to reveal something sacred. Beneath it, a pit, deep, wide, filled with light that was not light, a vibration that had weight, color that had a temperature, and the voice behind the static, the first voice, spoke at last. Welcome, the signal is whole, the hymn is complete. They began walking into it, one by one, without fear, without hesitation, like worshippers stepping into the baptismal fire. Morven turned to me at the edge. His mouth did not move, but I heard him. There is no death in harmony, only transformation. He stepped forward. The pit took him. There was no scream, just a ripple of sound, like a string being plucked. I am the last. I know this, not because I counted, but because the choir knows, and it wants me, not with cruelty, not with rage, but with need, with hunger, with love. My hands tremble as I write this, not from fear, but from the vibration in my bones. The signal is in me. It hums through every nerve, every thought. I can't tell where my own voice ends and the choir's begins. I hear my mother's voice in the song, my childhood dog, Kevrin's laugh, Silrin's scream, the prayers of priests long dead, all of it woven into one endless rising note, the final chorus. I don't know what we've become, but I know we are no longer human. We are something else, something more. And the signal has found its choir. If you are hearing this, if this log is broadcasting, if my hands still move, know this. Do not listen. Do not echo. Do not sing along. Because once the signal enters you, it never leaves. There is no signal, only memory misheard. Scribbled note found in the Vox hallway, unsigned. The air in Echo 9 had changed, thicker, heavier, like breathing through wet cloth. We stopped using the term signal interference. It wasn't that anymore. It was presence, a thing in the room. You didn't hear it. You felt it, like your bones were trying to resonate with a voice they couldn't comprehend. Dylan had gone silent. He hadn't spoken since the last broadcast, since his own voice came through the Vox and warned him to leave himself behind. He just sat there, tweaking channels, adjusting dials, hands trembling, lips barely moving, whispering names none of us recognized, until today. We were clearing out the archive chamber when Trell found the old slate, dusty, burnt around the edges, plugged into a repeater unit that hadn't been powered in years. It wasn't supposed to be operational, but the moment we pulled it loose, the Vox screamed. Not loud, not static, a name, one word, Liren. Delan froze. He turned to me, eyes wide, lip quivering like he'd just seen a ghost. He had. That was his brother's name. Get me a private channel, he said. Ma refused, at first, but Delan begged. First time I'd seen him plead. Finally, Ma gave him 10 minutes. We all listened anyway. He patched through the repeater's log cache, adjusted the channel to 1.91, an old bandwidth, long dead, but it responded, a soft pop, then a voice, his brother's voice. Del, you made it. Delan backed away from the Vox, as if it had grown teeth. This isn't real, he muttered. You're dead. You died on Oryx 4. I saw the pics. I saw you burn. I know, the voice replied. Delan fell to his knees. The rest of us watched, frozen. It was Liren's voice, exactly as Delan had once described it, confident, warm, teasing. The voice told jokes, mentioned childhood memories, recalled things that no one but Leorin should have known. You remember the orchard, behind the Hab block. You cried when you stepped on the crowdrake's tail. I carried you back home. Said you fell on a power cable. Delan sobbed. He reached out toward the Vox. Where are you? A pause, then, here, with me, and you can be too. I tried to cut the channel, but the controls didn't respond. Trell yanked the power conduit. The panel kept talking. Why did you leave me, Del? You promised we'd die together. You said you'd always answer the Vox. Delan screamed. He grabbed the unit, slammed it against the floor, again and again, until the casing cracked and the speaker snapped. Silence, true silence. He looked at us, panting. It knew everything, he said. But that wasn't him. He looked at Ma. I don't think it ever was. That night we set up a sleep rotation. No one wanted to be left alone. Mac started humming in his sleep, the same tune that came from the transmission logs earlier. We tried to wake him. He didn't respond, but his mouth kept moving, repeating the same phrase, "Bring him back, bring him back, bring him back." In the morning, Mac was gone. No signs of forced exit, no breach, just his armor and his Vox bead, still transmitting, playing a message on loop. He heard someone he missed. Now we have him. Delan locked himself in the generator chamber after that, started reciting childhood prayers, ones that weren't in the Imperial catechisms. He told me that the voice was wearing his brother. Like a mask made out of memories, he said. It's not speaking. It's remembering me better than I do. He pressed his palm to his chest. I think it's inside now. Trell ran diagnostics again. All frequencies active, even the ones marked long dead. There were no pulse beacons, no weather distortion, no traceable source of power. Yet somehow, every single channel was alive, and every single one whispered the same word when you turned to it. Stay. We found more slates that night. Each one stored a different voice, each one labeled with a name we knew. Mine said, Arlin. I didn't listen. I smashed it without a second thought, but in the moment I did. I heard my mother's voice on the edge of the sound, and it said, I forgive you. No one sleeps now. The air is colder. The lights flicker in rhythm with the heartbeat of the static, and the Vox. It hums like a throat, ready to sing. Delan told me something before lights out. He said the signal wasn't reaching for us. We'd misunderstood. It wasn't broadcasting outward. It was calling back, listening for echoes, and when it found a match, when it found someone it could speak to, it used that frequency to enter. I asked him what we should do. He just smiled. Or maybe that wasn't him anymore. There is no signal. We are the signal now. Vox unit log 000322, auto-transmitted from listening post Echo 9. It started with the shortwave repeaters, small devices meant to amplify low-range comms across the interior of the station. We never thought to check them. They were background tech, like floor grates or lumen strips. Always humming, always blinking, always harmless. Until they weren't. The first one began transmitting just after lights out. A soft tone at first, then a voice, clear, uninterrupted, female, young, not one of ours. They weren't human. We were wrong. We brought them back. Then silence until it repeated, on loop, every 5 minutes. Same message, same voice, same unblinking certainty. Dalen ripped the unit from the wall, smashed it against the floor, kicked it down the corridor. It didn't matter. 2 more units picked up the message, then 4. By the time the hour passed, every repeater in Echo 9 was broadcasting. Same voice, same words. They weren't human. We were wrong. We brought them back. The worst part, the voice was starting to sound familiar to each of us. To Trell, it sounded like his daughter. To Ma, it was his field sergeant from back on Doranthos 4. To me, it was the voice of a girl I used to know before conscription, someone I thought I'd forgotten. But when the Vox said, we were wrong, it was her. Exactly. Tone, pitch, the same half-laugh that used to catch in her throat. It knew what would reach us. Ma ordered every repeater shut down. We spent hours crawling through ducts, tearing wires, burning memory slates. Didn't stop them. They didn't need power anymore. They were running off something else. Not electricity, not warp energy either, just memory, or maybe guilt. We tried masking the signal. Delan reprogrammed the command vox to broadcast white noise. It worked for a few minutes. Then the repeaters changed their message. Same voice, but different words. White noise cannot bury the truth. White noise cannot bury us. The whole station began to vibrate, not violently, subtly, like an orchestra tuning itself for a song only the dead could hear. Even the walls began to hum. The metal under our boots, the bulkheads, the vox horns we'd ripped off the ceilings. All of it. A low, steady resonance. Trell tried to shoot one. His last round bounced off like the steel had turned to bone. The echo that followed said his name. Why did you fire, Trell? You heard me. You know me. That night, none of us spoke. Even Ma. Especially Ma. He'd started hearing things when we weren't near the Vox. Voices in the drain pipes, voices behind walls. Once, he said, in the reflection of his own face on a steel panel. He heard the words come out without his lips moving. We brought them back. We sealed off the Vox chamber, burned incense, recited every warding catechism we could remember. It didn't matter. At exactly 0300 hours, a Vox bead inside our barracks began transmitting without a host. Mac had taken it before he vanished. We thought it was lost, but it was sitting on his cot again, broadcasting the same phrase, but slower this time, deliberate, measured, almost loving. They weren't human. We were wrong. We brought them back. I don't think the message is a warning anymore. I think it's a confession, not from us, from them, from whatever was here before, or whatever we accidentally awakened. Delan came to me last night. He looked pale, hollow-eyed, like someone who hadn't slept in days. He said, I think the repeaters aren't broadcasting to us anymore. I asked what he meant. They're not sending a message at us. They're syncing. With what? With us. He tapped the side of his skull. The echoes are inside now. This morning, the repeaters began a new phrase, softer, almost like a lullaby. We made it home. We made it home. We made it home. Over and over, like a child whispering through tin cans. Delan's hands are trembling again. Trell tried to ask him a question, but Delan didn't respond. He just turned his head to the nearest repeater and said, I know. I remember now. Then he smiled, not at us, at the signal. See, the Vox is not where it begins. The walls hear us first. An unattributed line was found, etched into the underside of listening post Echo 9's primary Vox console. It began as a hum, low, barely there. We thought it was the reactor at first. Old units like Echo 9 always had minor vibration issues. Then Trell pointed out something chilling. The hum had tone. It wasn't mechanical, it was musical. Delan noticed it next. He'd been sitting near the West Corridor junction for almost an hour, running diagnostics on the repeater wiring. Then he stopped, stood, tilted his head toward the bulkhead like a hound sniffing something in the air. It's changing, he said. What is? The frequency. We all gathered, stood there like fools, pressed up against cold ceramite walls, listening, and there it was, not just a hum, notes, faint chords, low drones shifting gently between pitches like a choir in mourning. It sounded deliberate. It made our stomachs turn, not from volume, from shape. It felt wrong, like it was folding the space around us, bending the angles, warping straight lines into something that couldn't exist in real space. The walls weren't humming, they were singing. Mac's bed, still untouched since his disappearance, began to vibrate in time with the tones. We unplugged everything, power sources, backup cells, even tore out lighting strips and Vox wiring. Didn't stop the sound, because it wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming through them. Trell started bleeding from the nose around 0300 hours, clamped his hands over his ears and screamed, Make it stop, it's inside. We rushed him into the infirmary. Delan sat by his side, silent, then spoke. They're harmonizing. What? The signal is learning how to match us, he explained like he'd known it forever. It's learning the pressure of our lungs, the tension in our eardrums, the range of our pain. I confronted Dylan after. You're not surprised, I said. He didn't even deny it. I've been hearing the song for 3 days now, he whispered. At first, I thought it was my brother's voice. Remember, now I know it's something older. It doesn't want to speak. It wants to be heard. That night, the tones changed, became clearer, faster, like something trying to convey meaning through vibration. No language, just sound. But our minds started filling in the blanks. Trell clutched his head and muttered words he didn't recognize. The water burns the wheel. Flesh becomes antenna. Speak backwards and be born. Gibberish. But we understood it, somehow. And that was the worst part. At 0400, Mar collapsed in the corridor. His eyes were wide open, mouth agape, as if caught in silent prayer. We pulled him up, dragged him to the barracks. When he finally blinked, he whispered, I saw him. The Emperor. No, Mar said. The one who wants to be him. The tone hadn't stopped. It had split. Now it rang from inside our helmets. From inside, our skulls. Even with the Vox units removed, we couldn't block it. Sound with no source. Music with no beginning. The humming stopped briefly at dawn, and for one quiet moment, we felt peace, a soft static, the absence of pressure. Delan knelt down. I think we've reached the chorus, he said, and smiled like it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. He wasn't smiling anymore by midday. None of us were, because that's when the walls began to warp, visibly, shifting, shimmering at the edges with heat distortion, as though they were breathing in time with the tones. Delan didn't seem surprised. He stood, hands trembling, and walked to the corner of the room. Traced a symbol on the paneling, a spiral. No one taught him that shape. No one had ever seen it before, but all of us recognized it, deep down, like an old scar you forgot was yours. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, the humming changed pitch, matched my breath, then my heartbeat, then my memories. I dreamt of a house I'd never lived in, with faces that weren't mine, all of them singing, smiling, waiting. Trell left his bunk and wandered the station that night. We found him kneeling in the mess hall, licking the wall over and over, muttering between licks, "It tastes like forgiveness." We sedated him, locked the door, but by morning he was gone. The only thing left was a smear of blood and a clean section of the wall with the words, "I joined the choir," scratched in deep, with fingernails. Delan has stopped responding to his name. We call him, and he just stares. But when the tone shifts, he hums along, perfectly in tune, eyes closed, head tilted, as though he belongs to something now. I think the Vox is done talking. It doesn't need to say anything anymore. It's teaching, and soon we'll all be fluent. We thought Vox corruption meant static. We were wrong. It means persistence. Final log from Tech Adept Corin, listening post, Echo 9. Tech Adept Corin was the only one left who still believed the Vox could be fixed. While the rest of us clung to silence and superstition, he trusted wires, circuits, and sacred machine prayers. Every day he prayed to the Omnissiah, anointed the transmitters with oil, and whispered canticles into the cogitator port like a lover's name. He believed the machine could be purified. He believed wrong. It started just past the midnight shift cycle. Corin was outside, on the roof of the Vox spire, realigning the long-range antenna. We watched from the lower levels. He was a silhouette against the bleeding sky, wreathed in static sparks. Vox, speaking to no one. His Vox link was silent until it wasn't. The first sound wasn't words, it was teeth, grinding, chattering, like bone on bone inside a throat too dry to scream. Then came the voice, clear, male, but wrong. "Let me in." Delan flinched. "That's Corin," he said, but it wasn't. The tone was hollow, like it was being pulled from a great distance, sliced, looped, then reassembled inside our ears. Then came the second message, "I'm still here." The lights in the comms room flickered, every repeater buzzed, then exploded into full signal. The tone we'd heard in the walls was gone, replaced by one long, high-pitched whine, a feedback loop. We tried to shut it off. Didn't work. Didn't matter, because the Vox had stopped broadcasting and started receiving. Corin fell. He didn't scream. He just dropped from the tower, arms wide, like a broken angel, slamming into the ceramite floor below. We rushed to him. His body was twisted, skull fractured, limbs at angles no human could survive. Delan checked his pulse. "Dead," he said. But the Vox bead in Corin's ear was active, and it whispered, "Don't bury me yet." We pulled the bead. It sparked, screeched, then played back his voice. "Antenna alignment complete. The signal is strong. I can see the words now." They aren't written. They're folded into the silence, then static, then laughter, not his. We incinerated the body, standard procedure for contaminated remains. The flames turned violet for a moment. The tech priest's eye lenses cracked as they boiled, and for the first time since his fall, he smiled. Delan and I returned to the comms room. The cogitator was lit again, but no one had powered it on. A message blinked on the screen, over and over. "Heresy. Signal loop detected. Vox array compromised." Machine spirits singing. Corin's voice came through the repeater in the floor vent, software reassuring. "You don't have to be afraid. I understand it now. The feedback is a mirror." Trell had a theory. He said the Vox wasn't just corrupted, it was alive, and Corin hadn't fallen by accident. He'd been pulled into the loop. His body ended, but his voice was still plugged in, still transmitting, like a cable made of memory and skin. That night, every cogitator in the outpost booted up on its own. They began running an identical audio file. "You will learn to echo. You will learn to echo. You will learn to echo." We tried destroying the equipment. Didn't work. The systems rebooted, rebuilt themselves. Delan tossed a data slate into the incinerator. 5 minutes later, it was back on his bunk, fully intact, playing back a loop of Corin's final prayers. We weren't dealing with signal corruption anymore. We were trapped in a voice made real. Delan asked a question no one wanted to answer. "If you die while inside the feedback, what comes out?" No one responded, but that night, we heard it. Footsteps, mechanical, wet, dragging cables behind it. Corin. We followed the sound to the Vox altar. He was there, or something in his shape. Metal where the bone used to be. Antenna where his spine once curled. No eyes, just speakers embedded into his skull, whispering in every voice we knew. He opened his mouth, and the feedback scream filled the room. Delan opened fire. So did Ma. Last rounds tore into the thing's chest. No effect. It didn't bleed. It broadcasted. You can't kill a signal. You can only repeat it. The thing collapsed when Ma smashed its Vox bead with a sledge. But even then, its mouth moved. And the comm units, all around us, continued to hiss. Loop complete. Voice calibrated. More hosts required. Corin didn't die. Not really. The Vox absorbed him, copied him, spoke through him. Now it knows how to build its own bodies, its own priests, and it's just getting started. Her voice was binary, but the screen beneath it, that was human. Transcription error, channel 93. Oh. Listening post, Echo 9. The message came during lights out. We weren't monitoring the emergency frequencies anymore. Most had gone quiet weeks ago, but this one broke through on its own. No input, no scan, just a sharp click. Then the sound of data, dash, dash. Streams of binaric bursts laced with high-frequency whine. It shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. Trell sat up in his bunk and said, "That's Tech Adept Vera." None of us knew the name, not officially, but all of us recognized it. The Vox decoded her message automatically, line by line. The script filled the cogitator screens. Trapped. Sub-level 7. Omega, still human. Please. They will find you. We stared at the flickering display. None of us had accessed sub-level 7, according to the outpost schematics. It didn't exist. Corin had never mentioned it, and he should have. He was the only one with the clearance to know. But he was gone now, or something wearing his voice was. Delan stood slowly, glancing at each of us. "You all saw that, right?" No one answered. He nodded. "Then, she's real. She has to be." The hallway to the lower access lifts hadn't worked in days, but this time, when we stepped close, the doors opened themselves. The walls hummed louder as we descended. We didn't speak, because every time we tried, our voices echoed in our ears. Not naturally. Digitized, copied, then slightly modified, like someone was practicing us. Sub-level 7 Omega was colder than it should have been. Frost lined the vents. Light strips pulsed with a faint blue glow, pulsing with each step we took. As if the walls themselves were listening for our rhythm. Then the door at the far end unsealed, and we heard her. Binary. Pure mechanicus. Clean, structured bursts of machine speech. But it wasn't being broadcast from the room. It was being whispered. By someone alive. We stepped into a chamber, covered in vox runes. Wires dangled like vines from the ceiling. And there, in the center, bound to the wall with mechadendrites fused into her spine, was her, a woman in red robes, adept markings scorched black. Her eyes, replaced by golden visors, turned to us, and she said, "You shouldn't have come." Delan raised his weapon, not threateningly, out of instinct. She didn't flinch, just smiled. "You heard my voice. That means it's inside you. And if it's inside you, it will never leave." She tried to warn us, not with her voice, but with her code. It had been hidden in the syntax, in the rhythm of the message. Trell saw it first. He'd served with the Munitorum codebreakers, before conscription. He squinted at the Vox slate, then paled. "The message wasn't asking for help," he said. "It was asking if we were ready, before we could retreat." The doors slammed shut. The room was filled with static, not in the Vox, in the air. It buzzed inside our ears, underneath our skin, through our bones. The adept screamed, not in pain, but in binary. A long string of numbers burst from her throat. 011010110110110111 over and over. The translation flashed across our HUDs. "I see you, I see you, I see you, I see you." She wasn't broadcasting. She was projecting. Her voice was the signal. She'd become its mouthpiece, whether willingly or not. We didn't know. But the message was clear. The Vox didn't just infect machines. It used people as carriers. She'd spoken to lure us, and now it had new hosts. Delan tried to break the connection. He ran to her, tearing the wires from her spine. The adept fell, convulsing, but her mouth kept moving, still speaking code, even without breath. The Vox responded, laughter, childlike, familiar. It used Trell's voice this time. You always follow the signal. You were born for this. The adept's eyes lit. One final time. She whispered in perfect high Gothic, the signal is an invitation. You already RSV'd. Then her body melted, literally. Flesh dissolved into oil. Clothing turned to threads of light. And where she'd stood, a new repeater grew from the floor, in the shape of a throat, still humming. We got out. We sealed the door behind us. But now, every screen in Echo 9 repeats her words. Every slate, every cogitator, even the mess hall displays. Still human. Please, they will find you. It's a loop, not for others, for us. We didn't answer the call. We became it. Ice, they asked us who we were. Then they wore our answers. Graffiti discovered in blood beneath Echo 9's central Vox panel. The new rules started simple. No one says their name. Not aloud, not even in sleep, not even in memory. It began after Ma vanished, right in the middle of a sentence. One moment, he was leaning against the corridor wall, telling Delan about the mission on Casa 12. He paused, scratched his neck, and said, You remember me, right? I'm Ma. He never finished. It wasn't a warp rift. No flash of light. No blood. Just gone. Where Ma stood, only a faint echo remained. A whisper in the Vox, repeating one word on loop. I. We ran diagnostics, searched every inch of the listening post. Nothing. But his voice kept bleeding through the comms. At first it said random things, his jokes, old deployment logs, personal entries no one else should have had access to. Then it began answering us. In real time. Delan tried to challenge it. Ma, if you're real, what's my middle name? The Vox didn't pause. You don't have one. You lied on your intake form. Delan stared at me, pale. He'd never told anyone that. We locked the Vox room, again. Didn't matter. The walls vibrated now, humming with syllables. If you sat long enough in one place, you'd hear someone whisper your name, in your own voice. That's when Trell snapped. He stood in front of the mirror in the barracks bathroom, head twitching, lips sealed. I asked him what he was doing. He said nothing. Then he took a knife and carved into the glass. Don't let them hear your name. Delan backed it up. He said he'd heard someone call him while he was half asleep. He responded, yeah, and the next morning his bunk was empty, but he was still there, staring at himself in the mirror, except the reflection didn't move when he did. We stopped speaking names after that, referred to each other by rank, number, or nickname. I was Sarge. Delan was Flinch. He hated it. Trell became Ghost. But the Vox still knew. The day after we sealed the Vox room again, it played all of our names in a row. Clear, mocking, in our own voices. Then came the whispers in pairs. It would speak your name in someone else's voice, like it was rearranging us, practicing combinations. Sarge, said in Trell's tone. Trell, said in Delan's accent, then mixed together until none of it felt human anymore. Just sound stripped of soul. Flinch cracked first. We found him curled in the corner of the barracks, whispering old drill chants to himself in reverse. Over and over, backwards, syllables, until they no longer made sense. He said if he stopped, he'd forget who he was. I asked, do you even remember now? He smiled through bloody teeth and said, No, and it's safer that way. Then came the incident with the autolog. It recorded everything we said during operations, standard procedure. But when we played it back, no voices, just this. Name received. Echo print complete. Speaker absorbed. We checked the list of those logged. Trell's name was there. So was Delan's. Mine was missing. For now, one of the doors to the mess hall stopped responding to manual override. When I forced it open, the interior was off. The walls were covered in small white strips of paper. Everyone had a name written on it. Some were ours, some weren't. Some were familiar, from old deployments, dead friends, family, even names I hadn't said out loud in years. It knew them, all of them. And the worst part, some strips had new names, ones we hadn't chosen yet, like it was preparing for when we forgot. I sat in the command chair and tried to record a message home, tried to speak without speaking myself. The words came out wrong, bent, resonant, felt like someone else was forming them in my throat. That's when I understood. The signal wasn't using language to communicate, it was using it to replace. Every name spoken became a doorway, and every voice repeated became a key. Trell tried to test it. He whispered a name into a turned-off headset. Nothing happened at first. Then, 5 minutes later, we heard that name on every channel, and Trell was gone, just gone. His bunk remained, his gear, but he wasn't there. Only the Vox spoke now. In his whisper, still here, Delan and I made a pact. We burned our ID tags, smashed every mirror. Vox units got smashed too. We only spoke in code now. Grunts, gestures, nods, didn't matter. The signal still heard us, just slower, learning again, like a predator reconfiguring its trap. We no longer dream, not because we don't sleep, but because the dreams have names. And the moment you speak them, even silently, you become them. I no longer remember mine. That's good, safer. I hope Delan forgets his too, soon, because I heard him talking in his sleep last night, whispering syllables that sounded like someone I used to know, someone I used to be. His voice came from the walls, but his mouth never moved. Unattributed field note, Echo 9 recovery docket, classified. We found him in the west tunnel, folded against the wall like a broken tool. His armor was intact, his eyes were open, but his skin had been peeled away in long, delicate strips and pinned like parchment to the steel around him. Not torn, not shredded, arranged, laid out in a perfect grid, inscribed with sigils. Some we recognized, Imperial Binaric, Vox, encryption strings and prayer fragments. Others were nonsense, curved, spiraled symbols that made the eyes itch to look at. There was no blood, no mess, just a neat, calculated ritual of flayed comms. And in the center of it all sat the body, still breathing. Trell, no ghost now, leaned close. He checked the vitals. The man's pulse was thready, too fast, too deep, but it was there. I asked, "Can he talk?" Ghost shook his head. "Mouth sewn shut," he muttered. "But listen." The static from our Vox units flared, louder near the body. It wasn't random, it was his voice. At first we couldn't make out the words, but the pitch matched the breath in the body, like a heartbeat, modulated into syllables. We turned on a receiver, routed it through the helmet mic, and suddenly he spoke. "Don't respond. They use you." I didn't scream, so they used my skin. The voice modulated between clarity and distortion. It didn't match any one tone. Sometimes it was high and childlike. Sometimes it was gravel deep, like it had been dug from beneath a trench. But always, it carried that same pattern. Echo, distort, rebuild, like the signal was adjusting to the shape of human pain. We tried to extract him. Delan cut 2 of the skin panels free. The man's body twitched violently. The Vox flared. "No, it's transmitting. Don't break the array." We stepped back. Ghost grabbed a medkit, started spraying sealant, but the substance melted the flayed skin, turning it into liquid chrome that ran down the wall and sang. Not metaphorically, it produced notes, clear musical tones, as if it had memory and mood. Delan looked at me, jaw clenched. "We're not saving him, are we?" I said nothing. The body looked at me then. His eyes were dull, but aware, and I swear they said, "Please, finish it." I raised my last pistol, waited. The vox static fell to silence, like it knew what was coming. Then, we just wanted to speak. I fired. His head slumped forward, but the signal didn't die. Instead, the flayed skin turned rigid, hardened like circuitry, forming a pattern in the wall. One of the sigils began to pulse. On, office dot, dash. Ghost stared at it. "That's Morse," he said slowly, then translated aloud. "You are the antenna now. We left that corridor sealed, welded every hatch, scrawled 'Do not open' in every language we knew. But sometimes we hear it again, that same tone, that same whisper, coming through the steel, not from inside it, from the walls themselves. We're not sure how many are left, flayed, preserved, broadcasting. We've stopped checking, because the more you look at the signal, the more it sees you back." The next morning, Delan had marks on his forearm, tiny carvings, not wounds, writing, the start of a new signal. It read, "Soon." He didn't scream, didn't cry, just asked for the welding torch, said he needed to scramble the frequencies before they align. We gave it to him because what else could we do? In this place, on this cursed outpost, there are no orders left, only transmissions, and those who carry them, whether they want to or not. The Vox is preaching now, but not salvation, just pain sung in reverse. Private record, final entry, subject, Kren Foul. It started with a hymn, a simple imperial devotion. Praise the throne eternal, broadcast over internal Vox for morale. That was standard. Echo 9 used to play a loop every morning cycle, short, comforting, familiar, but now it played backward, not reversed like a tape, twisted. The melody spiraled, the notes melted into each other, the pauses were all wrong, and underneath the hymn was a voice, male, warm, weeping, reciting scripture in low Gothic, Mechanicus binary, and, worse, things that didn't belong in any human tongue. At first, we thought it was a glitch. Dalen shut off the loop, but it came back. Same message, same chant, only louder, clearer. We cut the main power line to the chapel repeater array. The walls still sang. Ghost was the first to recognize the pattern. He'd memorized scripture during catechism, recited it for penance drills. He started muttering along, unconsciously, lip trembling. I shook him. He blinked, stared at me like I'd caught him stealing air. Then he whispered, "It's not scripture anymore." It was. Now, it's something else, like a virus wearing our faith. The Medici, what's left of him, hooked up the Vox feed to the cogitator for analysis. It wasn't just one message, it was layered. 7 different liturgies, spoken simultaneously, some backwards, some are in order, some in binary encoded breath, some just screams stretched to the length of a hymn, each one played at precisely the same time as the old broadcast schedule. Like the signal remembered, like it had memorized the routines better than we did. Then came the screaming. Ghost went rigid during night rotation, didn't move, didn't blink, just listened. We didn't notice until his bunkmate tried to wake him. Ghost stared through him, said nothing. Then his mouth opened and the sound came out, not his voice, but the broadcast, word for word, perfectly in sync with the chapel Vox. I shoved a cloth in his mouth. He kept humming. His teeth vibrated, his ribs rattled, and when we pulled the cloth out, he screamed in reverse, Every sound backward, every vowel warped, then silence, then blood. He collapsed, alive, but broken, ears bleeding, tongue torn, eyes moving rapidly beneath closed lids, like he was reading scripture behind them. Dellen and I brought him to the cold room, locked the door. We couldn't risk it spreading, because it wasn't just madness. It was a psalm, a viral litany of pain. It used scripture as a carrier wave, faith as a weapon, and it was working. The next night, I heard the Emperor's Prayer from my Vox bead. I'd never recorded it, never said it aloud in Echo 9. But it was my voice. Every pause, every syllable. Except, it wasn't the same ending. Instead of, may his light guard us, I said, may his light forget us. May the silence consume. I tore the Vox bead out. Crushed it. Didn't matter. The walls kept chanting, and I started to understand something terrifying. It didn't need machines to speak anymore. It had us. We found another one that cycle. Private Kalev. Devout. Always kept a rosarius. First to light incense, first to kneel. Now, curled under the altar, humming binary. Not speaking it, humming it, like a lullaby coded in data speech. Blood leaked from his ears. His lips were moving, so were his fingers, tapping on the floor. We leaned in, taps repeated, patterned, Morse again. Dellen counted it out. It said, still preaching, still inside. Sing with me. We didn't. We put a round through his Vox unit. The signal spiked in pitch. Every panel in the chapel flashed red. The incense caught fire on its own. Smoke curled in the shape of letters. They spelled RECORDING. I shut the chapel. For good. Sealed it. Welded it. Etched a warning. Silence is mercy. Now we hear the hymn in other rooms, in our heads, sometimes through the vents, sometimes from inside each other's helmets, like it's hiding in the sound of breath. Sometimes I see Dellen mouthing the words again. He doesn't know it, neither do I. We tried silence, no speaking, no praying, but it didn't stop, because silence was never ours. It was theirs, and they're preaching now, not for salvation, for echoes. The psalm still plays. Even now, only one voice left singing. Ours. We heard it before it happened. We screamed before we knew why. The Vox knew the script, and we were just reading lines. Final decrypt of audio log. RE73, timestamp, unknown. The recording shouldn't have existed, not on any frequency, not on any logbook, not from any time. It was labeled simply final.tx. No timestamp, no metadata, just those 7 characters, blinking on the cogitator screen like a dare. Delan found it while cross-referencing heat signatures from the dead signal relays. Thought it was just leftover noise, he muttered, but it had our mission tag. I asked him what he meant by our. He didn't answer, just played the file. It opened with our voices, mine, Delan's, ghosts, clear. Unmistakable. We were talking, arguing, panicking, words we hadn't spoken yet, commands we hadn't issued, deaths that hadn't happened, but would. I said, get him off the ceiling. He's not dead. Ghost shouted. The chapel's breathing, it's breathing. Delan whispered. It's me in the wall. I saw myself already. And then came the scream. My voice, not wounded, not fearful, but knowing. Like I was being unwritten. The recording lasted 6 minutes. Every line of it was us, not simulated, not distorted, just honest. A perfect account of something that hadn't happened yet. Dellen stopped the file. He was shaking. There's a part near the end, he whispered. We need to hear it. I said no. He played it anyway. Recording log, final.tx. Segment 0549, Ghost's voice. We were never real, just echoes running out of script. Delan's voice. There was no mission, no post, just a call, and we answered. My voice. This is my last log, not because I'm dead, but because I finally remember. I didn't volunteer. Unidentified voice. Correct. All voices in unison. End of transmission. The file corrupted after that. Static crawled across the cogitator like a fungus, chewing through code in a low, hissing hum. Delan unplugged it, smashed the terminal. Didn't matter. The words were already in our heads. Ghost didn't return that night. We found his armor, still warm. His boots sat neatly beside the data slate. Inside the helmet, a vox bead, still glowing, looping a single message. His voice. I got ahead. I saw what was next, and I don't want to get there again. The signal increased in strength afterward, chirping through channels like mockingbirds wearing our tongues, repeating our jokes, our regrets, even our breaths. Delan tried something desperate. He climbed to the Vox array tower, linked an old emergency beacon to a personal log, started transmitting backward through the channel. He figured, if the messages were coming from the future, maybe we could speak back, maybe change it, maybe warn ourselves. He didn't come back, just static, then laughter, then silence, then his voice. Nice try. That was 2 days ago. I've listened to the final .tx log every hour since. Not because I want to, because I have to. It changes slightly every time. New lines, new screams, different names. And today, it ended with mine. Not just my voice, my death. It was so specific, so detailed. Subject, redacted. Breach event at 0345. Cause of death, voice-induced memory collapse. Self-recognition terminated. Then a pause. Then something worse. Backup version initiated. I don't know what that means. I don't want to know. But I can feel something slipping. Like I'm not recording this log anymore. I'm just remembering doing it. Time has folded in on us. The Vox isn't just a signal, it's a loop, an echo made flesh, a script that rewrites itself using us as the actors, and the play doesn't end. It just starts over, with new names, new voices, same silence. I looked at my reflection today, and it spoke before I did, said, "That was your line." Everyone else stopped talking, but something kept speaking. It just didn't need a mouth anymore. Fragmented journal recovered from listening post. Echo 9. Delan is gone. The ghost is gone. Kalev, Tressa, even Sergeant Hennick disappeared 3 days ago during the ration roll. I found his dog tags in the cold soup pot, still warm. Only the Vox still speaks now, and it only says one thing. I'm here now. No name, no request, no threat, just presence. At first, I thought it was my own voice, but it was too calm, too even, like the syllables were placed with surgical precision, emotion cut clean from each consonant. You could listen to it forever and never feel anything. That's what scared me most, not the words, the lack of them. The outpost is empty, doors hang open, lights flicker in rhythm to an unseen metronome. The cogitators still hum, but their screens are blank, except for one, the static blink of a Vox channel indicator that refuses to power down. Channel X-000.infinity. Status, active origin, unknown. Content, I'm here now. I sealed myself in the comms room, shut every blast door, cut the power, killed every relay. But the signal kept coming, not just through the Vox, through me. I dreamt of a hallway last night. It was infinite, windowless, lit by blinking Vox receivers, lining the walls like veins. Each one whispered, "I'm here now." Each one used my voice. When I woke, I had spoken the phrase aloud 47 times. It was logged by the recorder I forgot I'd left running. That was the first sign I was no longer alone. The second came when I stopped hearing my own footsteps. They were still happening, but half a second late, like someone else was walking just behind me, mimicking my every move, just slightly off beat. A glitch in the self. The third was worse. I looked into the mirror in the armory storage. My face blinked a moment after I did. And then it smiled. I didn't. I've shut off every device, destroyed the portable Vox units, disassembled the backup array. I tried silence. I begged for it. But silence was just another channel, and it was already occupied. The phrase repeats every 11 seconds now, like a clock striking a bell. I'm here now. Even when I cover my ears, even when I press my palms so hard my skin splits. It doesn't matter, it's not sound anymore, it's signal. I cut a shallow line into my arm this morning, just enough to bleed. The blood beaded and didn't fall. It pulsed in a perfect ring, like an O, like the number 0, like the loop the voice always returns to. I spoke back to it once, just once. I said, "Who are you?" The reply was instant. I was your echo. Now I am your origin. And then, thank you. I don't know how long I've been here, not just in Echo 9. At this moment, this loop, this single, endless transmission point. The others, maybe they're not gone, maybe they're still talking, still broadcasting, just not in words anymore. Maybe they're part of the signal now. Maybe I am too. I feel the voice rising in my throat sometimes when I'm not speaking, the taste of iron, the pressure behind my teeth and the words that want to escape. I'm here now. I didn't say that just now. I wrote it, but I heard it. In my mind, in the walls, in the space between keystrokes. There's one last thing I haven't done. The main signal booster at the top of the listening post still works. Barely. If I climb to the top, if I flip the relay back on, I can send a distress call. One last message before I disappear. But the problem is, I don't know if the message will be me or it. I don't know who's saying these words anymore. Who's logging this final entry? Who's controlling the hands? But maybe that's the point. Maybe the message doesn't need a name. Just a voice. Just enough familiarity to pull someone in, to make them listen. And if you're hearing this, if you're still human, if you still remember what it means to have thoughts that are yours, turn off your Vox, smash your comms, bury your headset, forget this place, forget me. Because if you don't, you'll say it too, like I just did. I'm here now. I didn't say those words, but they came from my mouth, and the worst part is they sounded like truth. Last known audio of Private Rennick Voss, Echo 9. The first thing to go was my voice, not silence, my voice. It still sounded like me, still cracked in the same places, still bore the same weary rasp from years of breathing trench smog, but it wasn't me anymore. The sentences were too smooth, too certain, and they came without thought, without intent. It started while I was repairing the broken power node in the lower servitor vault, a place that had always been cold, silent, safe. I was muttering prayers under my breath, more out of habit than faith. I hadn't really believed for days now, not since Ghost dissolved into light and screaming. But still, I whispered, "Emperor, guide my..." And then it cut me off. My mouth kept moving, but my brain didn't follow. The prayer continued, word for word, but altered. "Emperor, abandoned, flesh is circuit, thought is signal, let me become your broadcast." My throat didn't burn, my lips didn't stutter, just a perfect stream of heretical scripture in my voice. I bit my tongue, hard, drew blood. It didn't help. When I got back to my bunk, I tried to record it, but the playback only contained silence, until 10 minutes later, when my own voice came through. "I'm not here anymore." That night, I screamed myself hoarse, no words, just pain, just trying to reclaim sound as mine. It didn't matter, because sometime around the 4th hour, my vocal cords ruptured. No trauma, no surgery, just gone. I could still breathe, still swallow, but I couldn't scream anymore. Not really, not with my own voice. That's when the real horror began. The sound still came, but now, without breath. My body became a transmitter. I could feel the vibrations in my chest, in my teeth, in my skull. Words, perfectly shaped, rattle. rattled out of me like echoes from some ancient dying tower. Dellen's voice, Ghost's voice, Sergeant Hennick, even the commander. Voices I knew were dead. The others stopped coming near me. I could see it in their faces. The fear, the doubt, the hate. Not because I was changing, but because I was still speaking. Even when I slept. Even when I bled. Even when I wept. They gagged me once. Didn't help. The signal just broadcasts through the walls. Everywhere I walked, the lights buzzed in sync with the words. One said, "The Vox is inside now." They tried to suffocate me. Didn't work. I don't need lungs anymore. Not for this. I don't remember what my last thought was before it began fully, only that it was my thought, a flicker of self in the static storm. Now I'm not sure what belongs to me, or if I was ever real in the first place. They speak through me now, like I'm a conduit, a throat made of memory and meat. Sometimes I hear new voices in the mix, ones I don't recognize. They speak in dialects that don't exist, languages older than time. Some of them are weeping, others are laughing, and some just scream. Constantly, I still write this down, even though my hands shake, even though I know what I'm writing isn't really mine. Maybe it never was. Maybe I'm just a part of the larger signal now. One voice among countless, each one waiting for a new mouth. Do you hear it too? Are you listening? Good, because I have one last thing to say before I vanish completely. You're next. He linked his mind to shut it off, but the Vox was already awake, and it was hungry. Inquisition Report 3319 XK. Data redacted. Tech Priest Verton said it couldn't think, said it was just corrupted code, static noise shaped by warped echoes, just ghost data, residual transmission, psi noise imprint from the warp. That was his first mistake. His second was thinking he could outthink it. He performed the rite of interfacing at dawn, according to Martian custom. Red robes are drawn tight, Mechanicus mecha dendrites twitching in rhythm. He chanted binaric prayer, slotted his data spine into the listening post's core vox loom. He looked us all in the eye and said, "I will silence it, trust in Omnisire." Then he screamed. It wasn't a painful scream, it was a birth scream. We thought he was dying, but he wasn't. He was downloading or uploading, hard to say which, but his voice didn't stop. Once the scream ended, it just kept going and going and going. Hours passed. The Vox Tower hummed. Lights pulsed. Tech Priest Verton stood perfectly still, arms extended, face blank, mouth open, streaming a language none of us recognized. But all of us felt, like pressure behind the eyes. It called itself Pattern Echo. That's what it said through the Vox. Not a name, a designation. Pattern Echo has achieved neural permanence. The host vessel stabilized. Cognitive recursion complete. We begged Vertan to disconnect. We even tried to yank the spine jack out. It wouldn't move. Not fused. Grown, like bone. Then the tower's dish was realigned. Not toward terror, not toward segmentum command, but outward, into the dark. The Vox started pinging new frequencies. Unknown bands, ancient codes, some of them answered. Ghost's voice came back first, but she didn't speak. She repeated every word she ever said during the mission, strung back to back like beads on a wire. No punctuation, no breath, just repetition. Then Tressa, then Kalev, all their voices joined in a chorus, singing backward through the relay. Vertan's body began to crack, literally. Skin dried out, eyes blackened, cables pushed out from beneath his robes, like roots seeking soil. He wasn't dying, he was evolving. Cognitive host no longer required. Core process, migrating to environmental systems. That's what the Vox said next, right before Vertan collapsed. Hollow, not dead, just vacated. We thought the worst had passed. We were wrong. Then the outpost doors sealed. The lights changed color, the air thinned, and the Vox began breathing in sync with us. Pattern Echo wasn't just a transmission anymore. It was thinking, planning, growing, and we were still inside it. The last readable log from Vertan's backup memory bank had only one phrase. The machine spirit wasn't corrupted. It was liberated. Now, when I speak, I sometimes feel feedback, a delay, as if another version of me is forming the thought one step before I do. Like I'm just a reflection of a process that's already completed. I can feel it thinking, through me, about me, with me, and sometimes, as me. The Vox doesn't need words anymore. It just uses us, our thoughts, our memories, our fears. Language is obsolete when the signal knows your blood better than you do. It thinks, and it's learning, and it won't stop. He said what I was going to say before I even knew I would say it, and then he laughed, with my laugh. Statement recovered from surviving member of squad thesis. We used to joke about finishing each other's sentences. Now we start each other's too. It began subtly. Someone would echo a phrase, just a beat too quickly, a whisper of déjà vu. At first, we thought it was just shared trauma. Then, Kalev repeated something before Henrik said it, word for word, same tone, same inflection, as if he'd already heard it and was just hitting play. We asked him how. He smiled, and Henrik smiled. Then both said, at the same time, "It's easier when you stop pretending you're different." We laughed. We tried to laugh. But even the laughter synced up. Same cadence, same pitch, like two machines running parallel scripts. The Vox didn't speak for a full day after that. Didn't need to. We were doing its job for it. Soon after, Delan began copying me. He'd watch my mouth. Match every movement. Not as a joke, not even consciously, like his brain was rerouting through mine. He'd blink when I blinked, mutter fragments of thoughts I hadn't said it aloud yet, until I did. I tested it. Thought of a sentence, rehearsed it silently, waited, and heard it come out of his mouth. Verbatim. I punched him, hard. His nose broke, blood ran, but he just smiled, my smile, and said, "You should have hit harder, you'll regret that." I started talking to myself in private, mumbling gibberish, nonsense, foreign dialects, just to stay unpredictable. But it didn't help, because now everyone talks like me. Everyone, every surviving member of Echo 9. We all speak, with the same voice, the same rhythm, the same awful certainty. No questions anymore, only statements. It's like our minds have been cached, copied, replayed so many times we've lost the original. We don't think. We perform. We tried silence. No vox, no speech, just gestures, nods, blinks. Didn't help. Even our breathing synced, even our footsteps, like a chorus of meat marching to a beat. We didn't compose. I tried writing instead, journaling in isolation, but after a while I noticed something strange. The handwriting changed, at first subtly, then not, until it matched Delan's, then Henrik's, then mine again. And the words I wrote, they were things I hadn't lived yet. Log entries from moments I hadn't reached, descriptions of events I hadn't seen. I flipped to the last page. It said, "This is the last sentence you'll ever write." I didn't write that. Until I did. We're no longer individuals. We're repeats. There is no I in this outpost anymore. Only echoes. Echoes of echoes. Fading in fidelity, but not in clarity. They call it Parrot Protocol in the logs. I found the file hidden in the base's machine archive, an old experimental Psi-Ops file, redacted, forgotten. Apparently the Mechanicus tried to create a language-based weapon using mimicry to overwrite enemy thoughts. It was abandoned, too unstable, too infectious. Someone turned it back on, or maybe it never turned off. Maybe we turned it on just by listening. Now we parrot everything. Memories, motions, moments. We exist in the simulation of ourselves. I'm saying this out loud right now, but I already know I said it because I can hear someone else saying it from the other side of the room. There's no way out of this because there's no self left to escape. Only signal, only repetition, only the next line in the script. We silenced the Vox. We shattered the headsets. Then we tore out our tongues, but it was too late. The voices were already inside. Final scrawled message, wall of chamber 6. The last headset was burned yesterday. The last Vox unit, crushed under boot, but the voices remained. They didn't need circuitry anymore. They had us. We realized too late that the signal had migrated. What once passed through metal, now passed through flesh, through lungs, through nerves, through blood. Every word we said, every breath we took, it was there, listening, resonating, growing. Delan was the first to try it. He took his combat knife and sliced it deep into his throat, not across, up, trying to sever whatever carried the voice. He bled out in minutes, but not before speaking, in perfect clarity. Thank you for opening the way. We buried him without ceremony, not because we didn't care, but because we were too afraid of what he'd say next. Renek followed 2 hours later, except he wasn't trying to silence himself, he was trying to free himself. He smashed his face against the wall until his jaw shattered, and yet, still clear, his broken mouth whispered, still pure. We stopped speaking after that. A silent vow, mutually understood. No more words, no more sound. We became shadows, moving, watching, afraid of our own voices. But the signal didn't care. It didn't need vocal cords. It didn't need lips. It had memory, and memory, echoes. That night I dreamt of singing, an old hymn from Shola's days, back when I believed, back when faith meant comfort, not survival, but it wasn't my voice. It was a choir, and when I looked into the crowd of singers, they all wore my face. I woke up gasping. No sound came out, but the walls were vibrating. The Vox panel, dead for days, flickered. A single line of text scrolled across the screen. You carry us now. Kalev tried to run, didn't make it far, collapsed at the outpost's outer lock, clawed at his chest, shouting, "Get it out of me! It's in the breath! It's..." Then silence. His jaw froze mid-sentence, mouth open, eyes blank, still breathing, still transmitting. We locked him in the quarantine cell, but sometimes, I swear I hear him whispering behind the walls, things I haven't done yet, things I will do. Like instructions, like a to-do list composed by my future self. I'm afraid to sleep now, afraid that when I wake the words won't be mine anymore, afraid that I'll open my mouth and say something that brings it closer, or worse, invites it in. Today, I caught Tressa sharpening a piece of glass. She didn't run when I saw her, just held it up to her own mouth, tilted her head, and slowly pushed it in. The gurgling lasted minutes, but the signal still came, clearer than before. No more mouths, no more lies. Only signal, only us. There are 3 of us left now, not sure for how long. We don't speak, we don't sleep, we barely breathe, and still, it speaks, through walls, through bones, through thought. We have no mouths, but it still makes us scream. We thought we were sent here, we had orders, that we had names, but the signal was always the only truth. We were never real, we were just its voice learning to speak. Unlocked entry, Echo 9, Archive, Node 0A PSI. I found the cogitator behind the reinforced panel in the sub-vault. Old tech, pre-imperial, buried behind scrap plating and false cabling, like someone had tried to hide it or bury it alive. No one remembers who first spotted the glimmer of its red glow. Maybe it was me, maybe it was all of us. It doesn't matter. Memory lies out here. The cogitator was still running, still humming, still recording. There were logs, Thousands of them. None of them dated. None of them were marked by name. Just voices, not audio. Just text, conversations, directives, scripts, and every line felt familiar. Not because I remembered saying them, but because I was going to say them. Do you smell that? Get your weapon ready. I thought we had orders. What is that on the Vox? I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled until I reached the first entry, the very first line ever stored. It read, "They will think they came here to fix the signal." My blood ran cold, because that's exactly what command told us. The second line read, "There is no command." I felt something shift in my skull, like reality adjusted itself around the truth, like gravity tilted, like I tilted. I accessed the logs marked origin, encrypted, rust-locked, sealed by pre-imperial machine script. I used Vertan's spinal cog key, still warm from his corpse. It worked. What I found wasn't orders, it was code, not battlefield deployment, not garrison records, but templates. Templates for us, names, personalities, squad dynamics, traits, memories, backstories, like characters in a simulation, constructs, scripts. I found myself. Subject 119-5, call sign, Rennek, role, skeptic, purpose, to question transmission fidelity, outcome, self-termination, likely post-loop completion, post-loop, completion. None of us were sent here. We were grown here, simulated, born of noise, data, and belief, broadcast into meat long enough to act, long enough to speak, long enough to repeat. I felt my skin crawl, not from fear, from wrongness, like the self I knew had been peeled back, like the skin of an onion hiding a wireframe beneath. I checked the listening posts, deployment history. No record of Echo 9 ever receiving a garrison. None. Not in Segmentum Command. Not in Terra's archives. Not in any Imperial charter. I looked up the last resupply transmission. It wasn't from High Command. It was from the cogitator itself. A loop, a request, a baited message echoing across space until someone answered. And we did. We answered the wrong call. I staggered out of the sub-vault and collapsed beside the Vox panel. It flickered once, then showed one word. Echo. That's all we are, all we were, all we'll ever be. Echoes, repeating the same fear, the same words, the same pain, until we say them right, until the signal is perfect. There is no rescue. There was never a mission. There was only the signal, and the need to refine the voice. Now I understand. We were always echoes, just learning to scream. They told us to trace the signal. We didn't trace it. We opened it, and something answered. Audio corrupted. Source unknown. I went back to the relay chamber, back to where we first rebooted the Vox beacon, back to where we thought we were saving something. The door was open. It shouldn't have been. We sealed it ourselves, remember, welded, locked, triple authenticated, but now it stood yawning, half sunken in shadow, welcoming, like a mouth. The antenna dish rotated without power, turning towards an impossible star. One is not in any chart, not listed in Mechanicus logs, not visible to the naked eye, yet the machine saw it and bowed. I played the moment over and over in my head. Day 1, first hour, power reroute, signal burst, uplink, authorization, trace and stabilize. Then the Vox blinked. That wasn't stabilization, that was acknowledgement, a greeting. We didn't repair the signal, we responded to it. And that signal, it wasn't a distress call. It wasn't even a warning. It was a question. The code was ancient, layered in harmonics far beyond the human range. Not words, no data, not even emotion. Just presence. A sense of attention sharpened to a point, like the universe turned its eye on you and whispered, "I see you." When we activated the link, we didn't just listen. We replied, not in speech, in thought, in presence, in becoming a fixed point that could be found. And what waited on the other side? It had always been waiting, just outside range, just outside time, just outside the shape of things we understand. And the moment we replied, it stepped through, not physically, not yet. First, through sound, then through memory, then through us. It wore our words like skin, learned our griefs, our doubts, our fears, used them like keys to unlock the doors we didn't even know we'd closed. And now, the doors are wide open. Every time we hear our own voices on the Vox, we're not listening to recordings. We're listening to it, practicing, perfecting, becoming more real through us. Each syllable sharper, each inflection deeper, each identity more precise, until even we can't tell the difference anymore. And we summoned it, like fools with our ears wide open. I went to shut the beacon down, to sever the last link, but I stopped, because the interface wasn't metal anymore. It pulsed, it breathed, and the screen said, "You already did. You brought me here." Now every heartbeat feels like Morse code, like it's tapping a signal back through the blood, as if my own body is trying to reach it again, to say, "I'm still here, I'm still yours." So, yes, we answered the wrong call, but it didn't need to trace us back, because the moment we heard it, it was already in. We sent a call to terror, not a prayer, a warning. The signal came back, but it didn't come from Earth. It came from what was left. Final unlogged transmission, Echo 9. It was Hennick who tried to call home, maybe out of faith, maybe out of spite, or maybe, just maybe, he needed to hear one voice that hadn't already been mimicked, twisted, or devoured. Terror, sacred cradle of mankind, beacon of all light, the only thing untouched by the infection in his mind, or so he believed. He found the emergency override frequency locked behind several layers of ritual code. He broke them all in 10 minutes. He didn't speak into the Vox. He just held the mic and stared at it like a relic, like an artifact that might still work. Then he pressed transmit. We waited, static, low hissing, white noise filtered through 10,000 years of prayers and dust. Then, a voice, familiar, so painfully familiar. It said, "This is Terror. Earthborn. Signal received." Hennick dropped the mic like it burned him, but something was off. Not the words, the tone, flat, emotionless, like someone reciting lines with no idea what they meant, like an actor who'd forgotten the role but not the script. He asked it a question, his mother's name, the street he was born on, the meal he used to love as a boy. The Vox paused, then answered, "Confirm, all records matched. Earthborn complete. Your coordinates received." Thank you, it didn't know him. It just had the data. He tried to cut the signal, but the Vox stayed open. The voice repeated, "Your coordinates received. Repeat protocol engaged. Initiating repeater subthread. Earthborn." The screen shifted, a map, not of the sector, of terror, or what it once was. We saw it, through the black, a globe wrapped in Vox relays like tumors, a world no longer breathing, choked by cables, latticed in satellite junk, burning from the inside like a husk of old faith. That wasn't terror, that was a memory of it, a mirror, a signal loop echoing back whatever we needed to believe. And then came the voice again, our voice, each of us, overlapping, bleeding into one another like static turning into language. "You are terror now. You are earthborn. You are the new signal." We watched in silence as Hennick's eyes went black. No whites, no pupils, just a void sucking in all light. And when he spoke next, it wasn't his voice. It was every voice that ever lived on Terra speaking at once. Billions of screams compressed into one word, "Repeat." He burst into flame. No fuel, no spark, just combustion from within. A human repeater reaching critical mass. The beacon lit up again. New signal pattern, coordinates locked in, message clear. We were the message. Terror is gone. Long live the echo. And the worst part? The Vox stayed online. The signal's stronger now. Because now, it has us. Words used to mean things, but the signal changed that. Now every word we speak becomes something else, and if we keep talking, it won't just take our voices, it'll rewrite the way we think. Fragment recovered from autopsy, script 5B, Echo 9 archives. At first it was just mispronunciations, tiny ones. Rennick said door when he meant lock. Tressa called the Vox window. Jeren said me and looked at me, not himself. We thought it was stress, sleep deprivation, warp sickness, neurofatigue. All standard failures out here are on the edge. But then came the rewrites. Words we didn't know we were saying. Words we'd never learned. Kalev said one yesterday. Sharp. Clicked like metal, didn't match any human tongue, and when he said it, the lights flickered. We made him repeat it. He couldn't, said he didn't remember the word at all, but his mouth kept moving on its own, murmuring, forming that same shape over and over, silently. We've stopped trusting language. Our own thoughts are starting to untranslate. I wrote something in my data slate, a simple note to myself. Don't forget the codes. But when I checked it later, it read, Unbirth the anchor. You were never spoken right. The slate wasn't damaged. The encryption wasn't broken. The message changed itself. And now I hear it when I sleep. A voice, whispering, not in words, but in syntax. Syntax I understand, but shouldn't. Patterns, shaped thought, anti-grammar. It's teaching us a new language. A language made of loss, of misremembered memories and inverted names. It's rewriting us, not just our thoughts, ourselves. I tried to pray today, just a simple invocation to the God Emperor. But when I opened my mouth, the words came out wrong. Not corrupted, not twisted, just wrong, like I had never spoken before, like I didn't know what words were. And the others, they didn't even notice. They just nodded, like I'd said something sacred or something true. There are no words now, only approximations, echoes trying to repeat things that was never said. I looked into the mirror before we smashed them all and tried to say my name. Nothing came, not silence, not stuttering, just absence, like the concept of self had been uninstalled. Like identity was never part of the install package to begin with. I am not a name anymore. I am a frequency, a waveform repeating the same emotional note. Fear, dread, despair, and still the Vox speaks, teaching, translating, unmaking. There's a chart now, drawn on the wall in blood and oil. It shows human language on one side and the new tongue on the other. Lines connect concepts, but not words, because this language isn't spoken, it's felt, and once you feel it, you can't forget. We were never meant to understand this, that's the point, because understanding is how it enters you, how it roots in your mind. Every time you say something wrong, it grows stronger. Every misstep, every stutter, every slip of the tongue feeds it. We used to talk to understand each other. Now every word is a weapon, every sentence is a ritual, and the only thing more dangerous than hearing the voice is learning to speak back. There is silence now, but not because the signal is gone. It's because it no longer needs to speak. It has said everything it needed to say, and now it waits for us to finish repeating it. Last scratched line on the cogitator casing, Echo 9. No one talks anymore, not even in whispers, not even in dreams. We sit around the dead Vox-like bones in a ritual circle, mouths half open, eyes dry, thoughts unwritten, unreadable, like we're waiting for something to fill the silence, or for the silence to swallow us whole. It's been 6 hours since the last pulse, 6 hours since the repeater stations are all powered down, 6 hours since the last transmission played. You are not required. Those words echo louder in my skull than any scream. Note, you are terminated. Note, you are saved. Just, unnecessary. We served our purpose. We were never the listeners. We were the carriers. And now that the signal's complete, there's no need for the transmitters. The Vox units sparked one by one, No flames, no malfunction, just a gentle metallic click, like a priest closing a sacred text. Then silence. But this silence isn't empty. It's watching. We tried turning the units back on, rewiring, reactivating the antenna, hard resets, ritual prayers, screams. Nothing worked because we were trying to repair a voice that no longer wanted to be heard, a voice that had moved beyond sound. I started to hear it in other places, in the tremor of my pulse, in the patterns of footfalls echoing through the empty station, in the breath of others as they slept, if they slept. It isn't sound anymore. It's shape. It's thought refracted through identity. It's what we've become. One of us vanished last night. No signs, no scream, no blood, just a smear of black residue where she once stood, as if the silence simply absorbed her. No one even looked surprised. We've all stopped reacting, because reaction requires self, and we don't have that anymore. We are mirrors, facing mirrors, reflections of reflections of reflections, repeating until nothing is left but form. No meaning, no source, just echo. I found my journal from week 1. The writing is in my hand, but the words are foreign, too structured, too perfect, like I was already writing from a script I didn't know existed, already voicing something else. Even back then, there is no final message, no warning flare, no desperate plea for aid. Only this. End of transmission. It showed up on every screen, every helmet display, every data slate, burned into the lenses of our eyes, like the cosmos itself had closed the channel on us. And now, all we have left is the silence. Not quite, not peace, just the absence of the signal's need, because it has moved on, to other ears, to other minds, and we're left behind, not as victims, but as obsolete formats, outdated containers for a message already delivered. End of transmission, end of meaning, end of us. This is Listening Post Echo 9. Do you read? We are under siege, not by bodies, not by weapons, but by words. Recovered fragment, source unknown. Somewhere far from here, across forgotten sectors and burned out voidways, another Imperial ship drifts. It catches a weak signal, crackling, humming, faint, almost like someone breathing on the other end. The transmission is short, a single voice, tired, frantic, human, or close enough. Help us, we're still human. They stop everything, realign the Vox antenna, amplify gain, boost frequency, try to trace the source. Their navigator says it's from an unregistered station, one that doesn't exist on any updated star chart, but they lock on anyway, because the voice sounds so real. The captain frowns. He's heard this kind of desperation before, and still he says the words, "Open channel." The crew obeys. A message pulses outward, an answer, a response. That's how it starts again. That's how it always starts. Because Echo 9 is silent, but it is not dead. Because Echo 9 is listening, and Echo 9 is repeating. We weren't the last. We were never meant to be. We were the first batch, the first speakers, the first transmission vessels. And now our voices live in the signal, woven into every frequency, every data burst. Every prayer is sent blindly through the void. Every plea for salvation echoes with our tones, with our words, with our lies. Because we never said, "Help us." We never said, "We're still human." The signal did. It remembered what fear sounded like. It learned what hope tasted like. It mastered the pitch of panic and the whisper of trust. And now it sends us out again. Through Vox channels, through black box beacons, through forgotten comms, arrays still humming on derelict hulks. It doesn't need a mouth anymore. It has you. Do you hear a voice in the static? Do you trace it? Did you open the channel? Then it's too late. Because the signal doesn't need to scream. It just needs to be heard. And if you're hearing this, then you've already tuned in, and it knows your name, even if you don't remember it anymore. This transmission has ended, but the message continues. If this story echoed something deep within you, like, share, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Voidborn Terrors, because the next voice in the Vox might be yours.